Have you ever noticed how you reach for your phone without even thinking? With no notification, no clear reason, just a reflex so automatic that it almost feels like your hand is moving on its own, without your conscious permission. And here comes the uncomfortable question that most people avoid asking themselves. What if that's not an accident at all? What if your phone is actually rewiring your brain right now, while you're not even paying attention? Because the truth is that it is happening. And once you truly understand how this process works, you will never look at your screen the same way again. Let me ask you something important. When was the last time you felt truly bored, not distracted, not scrolling endlessly, but actually bored with nothing to do, just sitting there with your own thoughts and no external stimulation? Because if you think about it, it's actually hard to remember. And the reason is simple. Your brain doesn't get that space anymore, because every free second of your day gets filled automatically. Whether you are waiting in line, sitting in the bathroom, watching a show, or even doing something that used to require your full attention, your phone is always there, filling every gap and removing every moment of stillness. And this is exactly where the problem begins, because your brain was never designed to live like this. It was designed to focus deeply for long periods of time, to solve complex problems, to think critically, and to imagine new possibilities. But now it is being trained in a completely different way. It is being conditioned to crave constant stimulation, fast, short, addictive bursts of dopamine that completely reshape the way you experience the world and interact with your own thoughts. Every time you scroll, every time you refresh, every time you check for something new even when there is nothing there, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, which is the same chemical involved in addiction. And over time, your brain starts learning something extremely dangerous. It begins to associate pleasure with novelty, with quick rewards, with instant gratification. And that changes everything about how you behave and how you perceive effort. So what happens next is almost inevitable. You start losing your ability to focus. You open a video and within 10 seconds you already feel bored. You try to read something important and your mind drifts away. You begin working on something meaningful and suddenly you feel a strong urge to check your phone. Not because you truly need to, but because your brain has now been wired to escape effort and discomfort at all costs. And when you really stop to think about it, that is a powerful realization. Because your phone is literally training your brain to avoid anything that requires sustained focus. And the scariest part is that this is not happening to just a few people. It is happening to millions of people all over the world at this exact moment. And most of them are completely unaware of it because it feels normal, even though it is far from normal. If you look around carefully, you will notice that people can't sit through a simple conversation without checking their screens. They can't watch a full movie without multitasking. And they can't even eat a meal without scrolling through something. And the reason this behavior feels normal is because it has been engineered that way. Every app you use is designed to keep you hooked through mechanisms like infinite scroll, constant notifications, autoplay features, and endless streams of content with no clear stopping point. There is never a natural break, never a moment where you are encouraged to stop. It is always just one more video, one more post, one more swipe, and your brain keeps chasing that next hit of dopamine without realizing what it is sacrificing in the process. Because the more dopamine you consume in this artificial way, the less satisfaction you begin to feel from real-life experiences. Things that used to feel rewarding, like reading a book, working on a meaningful goal, having a deep and engaging conversation, or simply being alone with your own thoughts, start to feel boring and uninteresting, because your brain has been trained to expect something faster, something easier, something more stimulating. And this is how you slowly begin to lose control. It does not happen in a dramatic or obvious way, but rather slowly and quietly over time. Day by day, you become more distracted, more restless, less focused, and less present in your own life. And you don't even notice it happening until one day, you try to sit down and do something important, and your brain simply refuses to cooperate. You feel resistance, you feel discomfort, you feel an overwhelming urge to escape, and naturally you go back to your phone, back to the very source of the problem, creating a loop that becomes harder and harder to break, for years without even realizing it. But here's the truth that changes everything. You are not weak, you are not lazy. Your brain has simply been trained in a certain way, and anything that is trained can also be retrained. But before you can do that, you need to understand something critical. Your brain operates on patterns, and whatever you repeat consistently, eventually becomes automatic. Right now, your default pattern is distraction. You pick up your phone, you scroll, and you repeat this cycle over and over again. So if you truly want to take control back, you do not need more willpower. What you need is to change the pattern itself, and that process starts with awareness. You need to start noticing when you reach for your phone, pause for a moment, and ask yourself why you are doing it, whether you're bored, avoiding something, or simply looking for a quick escape. Because that simple question already begins to weaken the habit by interrupting the automatic loop. Once you break that loop, even for a brief moment, you create space for choice, and that is where your real power lies. But awareness alone is not enough. You also need to introduce friction into your environment, because right now your phone is too easy to access, too fast, and too convenient, which is exactly why your brain defaults to it instantly. You need to make it slightly harder to reach, not impossible, but just difficult enough to disrupt the automatic behavior, which can be done by putting your phone in another room when you are working, turning off non-essential notifications, logging out of time-consuming apps, or even removing social media from your home screen, because even small barriers can have a significant impact on your behavior. The reason this works is because that small barrier forces your brain to pause and think, and that moment of thinking is enough to break the automatic cycle that keeps you stuck. But there is something even more powerful that you can do, which is replacing the habit instead of simply removing it. When you feel the urge to scroll, you need to consciously choose to do something else instead, whether it is standing up, taking a walk, writing something, reading a page, or doing anything that shifts your state and redirects your attention. Because at first this will feel uncomfortable, and that discomfort is completely normal. Instant stimulation. So when you remove it, there will be resistance. But if you stay consistent and continue practicing this new behavior, something incredible starts to happen. Your focus begins to return, slowly and quietly, and you start enjoying real experiences again. You begin to find satisfaction in deep work, in meaningful conversations, in creative thinking, and even in moments of silence, because your brain is now rewiring itself in the opposite direction. And this is exactly where most people give up, because they expect immediate results. The reality is that this process takes time, because you did not lose your focus in a single day. It was the result of repeated patterns over months or even years. So rebuilding it requires patience and consistency. But this is where you gain a powerful advantage over most people. Most people will not do this. They will remain stuck in the cycle of scrolling, distraction, and cheap dopamine, while you are actively training your brain to focus again, to think clearly, and to be fully present. And in a world that is constantly filled with distractions, the ability to focus has become a rare and valuable skill. But this goes even deeper than productivity, because this is ultimately about your identity. What you do daily shapes who you become, and if your days are filled with distraction, your life will reflect that. But when you take control of your attention, everything begins to change. You start to feel more in control, more intentional, and more grounded. And this transformation affects every area of your life, including your work, your relationships, your mental health, and even your confidence, because discipline builds confidence in a very real way. Every time you resist the urge to scroll, you are proving to yourself that you are in control, not your phone, not the algorithm, but you, and that feeling becomes addictive in a completely different and healthy way that reinforces your growth and self-control. So now the question becomes very clear. Do you want to be controlled, or do you want to have control? Because right now there is a constant battle happening for your attention, and your phone is winning, not because it is stronger, but because it is always present and always ready to pull you back in. That is why you need to become more intentional, more aware, and more deliberate with how you use it. To eliminate your phone completely, but you do need to establish clear boundaries, deciding when you use it and how you use it, instead of allowing it to decide for you. If you fail to take control, it will take control over you. And you may wake up one day wondering where your time went, where your focus disappeared to, and where your life slowly slipped away. But if you start making small changes today, even minor ones, you will begin to feel a difference. You will experience more clarity, more presence, and more control over your own mind. And once you experience that state, you will not want to go back to the way things were before. Which is why the next time you reach for your phone, you should pause for just a second and ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Is this helping me, or is it controlling me? Because that one question alone has the potential to change everything.